The massive doors of the council chamber slid open with a hiss that echoed through the vast hall. Ji-hoon Park walked forward, his boots clicking against the polished metal floor. Behind him came Mina Choi and Dae-ho Kim, both wearing the same calm expression that Ji-hoon carried on his face. The three humans moved through the chamber like they owned it. Even though everyone in the room knew they were about to be judged, the Nexus station hung in space above a dying star, a monument to the power of the Galactic Council. It had been here for 10,000 years, watching over 100 different species, keeping peace across the galaxy. Today, it would make a decision that would change everything. Ji-hoon stopped at the center of the chamber. Around him, seated in a perfect circle, were the representatives of 20 different alien races. Some looked like crystals that hummed with energy. Others were massive creatures with too many arms. A few were just floating clouds of gas that somehow could speak. They all stared down at the three humans standing in the middle of their chamber. Ambassador Verath of the Vreniks spoke first. His voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm, beautiful and terrible at the same time. Commander Park, we have called you here to discuss the future of humanity in the Galactic Council. Ji-hoon nodded but said nothing. He had learned long ago that silence was sometimes the best response. For 200 years, Verath continued, humanity has been part of our community. You have contributed much. Your engineers have fixed our stations. Your soldiers have fought our wars. Your scientists have solved problems that challenged us for centuries. For this, we are grateful. Anna shifted slightly beside Ji-hoon. She knew what was coming. They all did. However, Verath said, and his tone changed, the Council has grown concerned. Humanity expands too quickly. You build too fast. You innovate without asking permission. Your military grows stronger every year. Your colonies spread across space like a virus. Kun felt anger rise in his chest, but his face remained calm. Beside him, Dae-ho's jaw tightened slightly. That was the only sign of his reaction. Another voice joined the conversation. This one belonged to Elder Kareth, a creature that looked like an octopus made of stone. We do not question your loyalty, Kareth said. We question your restraint. You are young, aggressive, unpredictable. The elder races have maintained peace for millennia by following the old ways, the tested ways. But humans always want to change things, to push forward, to take risks. Is progress a crime? Ji-hoon asked quietly. Progress without guidance is dangerous, Verath replied. Therefore, the Council has decided to place humanity under protective oversight. You will surrender command codes for your military fleet. All scientific research will be submitted to the Council for approval before implementation. Monitoring stations will be placed in every human system to ensure compliance. These measures are for the good of the galaxy. The chamber fell silent. Every alien eye sensor, or whatever they used to see, focused on the three humans. Ji-hoon took a slow breath. He had practiced this moment in his mind 100 times during the journey here. He had known what they would say. Earth had known. The entire Terran government had discussed this possibility for months. No, Ji-hoon said simply. Verath's crystal form flickered with what might have been surprise. Excuse me? Humanity declines, Ji-hoon said, his voice steady and clear. We will not surrender our sovereignty. We will not submit our research for approval. We will not allow monitoring stations in our space. The chamber erupted. Voices overlapped in dozens of languages, translated instantly by the chamber's systems. Outrage, disbelief, anger, cannot refuse the Council. Someone shouted. We have the authority to enforce this decision. Another voice called out. Ji-hoon waited for the noise to die down. When it finally did, he spoke again. You have the authority to make decisions for Council members, he said. But effective immediately, humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council. We are no longer members. Therefore, you have no authority over us. The silence that followed was absolute. In 10,000 years, no species had ever left the Council voluntarily. Species were destroyed. Species went extinct. Species were absorbed into others. But no one ever just walked away. Elder Kareth leaned forward. You would abandon the protection of the Council? The benefits of membership? The trade agreements, the mutual defense pacts, the sharing of knowledge? We would, Ji-hoon said, because those benefits came with a price we paid willingly when we were treated as equals. But you are not offering us partnership. You are offering us chains dressed up as protection. We have seen this before in our own history. We will not accept it again. Anna spoke for the first time, her voice carrying across the chamber. For 2 centuries, we have bled for you. We have died in your wars. We have solved your problems. We have asked for nothing but respect in return. Today you have shown us that you never saw us as equals. You saw us as useful tools that needed to be controlled. Daeho added his own words. You call us dangerous because we grow and change. But perhaps we are not the problem. Perhaps the problem is that you have not grown or changed in 10,000 years. You are so afraid of progress that you would rather chain those who embrace it than learn from them. Vareth's form pulsed with anger. If you leave, we will consider it an act of hostility. We will impose sanctions. We will blockade your systems. We will treat you as we would any rogue state. Ji-hoon smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Do what you must. We will do the same. He turned to leave. Mina and Daeho turned with him. Wait. Elder Kareth called out. You cannot simply walk away. There are treaties. Agreements. Humans are stationed throughout Council space. What of them? Ji-hoon paused and looked back over his shoulder. They will all come home. Every human diplomat, every human engineer, every human soldier, every human scientist. We will remove ourselves from your space entirely. You wanted us controlled. Instead, you will have us gone. I hope that brings you the peace you seek. The 3 humans walked toward the massive doors. Behind them, the council erupted again in shouts and arguments. But Ji-hoon did not look back. He had said everything that needed to be said. As they left the chamber and walked down the long corridor toward their ship, Mina spoke quietly. They will regret this. Probably, Ji-hoon agreed. But that is no longer our problem. They made their choice. We made ours. Their ship was waiting at the docking bay. Within an hour, they would leave Nexus Station. Within a day, the message would reach Earth. Within a week, the recall would begin. Humanity was going home. The galaxy would have to learn to live without them. The message came through on every human device in Council space at exactly the same moment. 3 words appeared on screens from the core worlds to the frontier stations. Come home now. Captain Hyen Lee stood on the observation deck of the Kelix 9 research station and watched the message blink on his tablet. He had been expecting it. Everyone had been expecting it since the news broke about the council meeting. Still, seeing it made everything real. Behind him, Dr. Sun Mi-han rushed into the room, her face pale. Hyen, we cannot leave now. The Crimson Plague research is almost complete. We are at 87%. Another 3 months, and we will have a cure. The Thrall are dying by millions every day. Hyen turned to look at her. Sunmi had worked on this project for 5 years. She had barely slept during that time, driven by the knowledge that every day of delay meant more death. The Thrall were insectoid creatures, gentle and kind, with a civilization built on art and music. The plague was killing them faster than they could reproduce. No, Hyen said quietly. But orders are orders. Orders. Sunmi's voice rose. Hyen, this is not about orders. This is about right and wrong. We can save them. We can, Hyen agreed. But we will not. Not anymore. He walked past her toward the communications center. Assemble all human personnel. I want everyone ready to evacuate within 48 hours. The next 2 days were chaos. There were 63 humans on Kelix 9, working alongside 200 Thrall scientists. The Thrall came to Hyen in groups, begging him to reconsider. They offered money, resources, anything humanity might want. One elderly Thrall scientist named Cheekith actually fell to his knees, his multiple legs folding beneath him. Please, Cheekith said through his translator. My grandchildren are sick. The plague will take them before the next season. You are so close to saving them. Hyen felt something break inside his chest. He knelt down beside Cheekith and placed a hand on the alien's shoulder. I am sorry. Truly I am. But my people have been recalled. I have no choice. There is always a choice, Chucketh said.
Yes.
Hyan replied. And the council made theirs. This is the consequence. Before he left, Hyan did one thing that was not technically part of his orders. He transferred all human research data to the Thrall computer systems. Every test result, every experiment log, every theory they had developed. He left it all behind in sealed servers. Maybe your scientists can finish what we started, he told Checkwith. I hope they can. Cheeketh looked at the data and then back at Hyan. Without your people to explain it, to guide us through the final steps, this is just numbers and symbols. We do not think like you do. We do not see patterns the way humans see them. Hyan had no answer for that. He boarded the last transport with Sunmi, who had not spoken to him since the decision was announced. As their ship lifted off from Kelix-9, she finally broke her silence. I will never forgive them for this, she said. And I will never forgive us either. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out in hundreds of locations. Dr. Sora Nam oversaw the shutdown of 17 terraforming projects. Entire worlds were being transformed from barren rocks into living planets, custom designed for species whose own homes were dying. The projects were decades-long commitments, requiring constant human supervision, so stood on the surface of Velkin 4, watching the atmospheric processors hum in the thin air. In 20 years, this world would have breathable air, flowing water, and forests. The Pelthic people would have a new home, but only if someone maintained the processors, adjusted the chemical balance, and guided the transformation. What will happen to these worlds? Asked her assistant, Unibe. They will fail, Sora said flatly. The council races do not understand the delicate balance required for terraforming. They will try to continue the projects, but without human oversight. The atmospheric processors will either overcorrect or undercorrect. Some worlds will become toxic. Others will simply revert to dead rocks. And the people who were supposed to live here? Sora looked up at the alien sky. They will have to find another solution, one that does not involve us. Commander Jisoo Kong faced perhaps the hardest evacuation of all. She commanded the Terran defense fleet in the contested zone, a region of space where the Void Swarm had been trying to break through for 15 years. The Swarm was not a species in the traditional sense. It was a hive mind made of silicon-based creatures that consumed everything in their path and adapted to any defense. The Council's own fleets had failed to stop the Swarm repeatedly. Only human tactical flexibility and constant innovation had held the line. Jisoo's fleet of 200 ships formed the backbone of the defensive perimeter. When the recall order came, her officers gathered in the briefing room of the flagship. Lieutenant Woojin Park spoke first. Commander, if we leave, the Swarm will break through within weeks. The Council forces cannot hold without us. I know, Jisoo said. Millions will die, added Captain Juan Cho. I know that too. Then how can we leave? Woojin demanded. Jisoo stood up and walked to the tactical display. It showed the defensive line, with human ships marked in blue and Council ships in green. The Swarm was shown in red, pressing against the barrier like a tide against a dam. Look at this display, she said. Count the ships. The Council has 3 times as many vessels as we do. They have more resources, more personnel, more everything. And yet, where are they? They're in the 2nd and 3rd defensive lines supporting us. They let us take the front line because we are better at it. They let us die because they do not want to. She turned to face her officers. For 15 years, we have held this line. For 15 years, we have lost ships and crew. For 15 years, we have asked the Council for support, for reinforcements, for newer weapons. And for 15 years, they have given us just enough to survive, but not enough to win. They kept us here, bleeding because it was convenient for them, so we abandoned everyone behind the line, Jiwon asked. No, Jisoo said. We stopped protecting people who refuse to protect themselves. The Council has the strength to fight the Swarm. They simply lack the will. Maybe when they lose a few dozen systems, they will find that will. Or maybe they will not. Either way, It is no longer our problem. The withdrawal from the contested zone took 3 weeks. Jisoo coordinated it carefully, pulling her ships back in stages to avoid leaving gaps the swarm could exploit. She transmitted all tactical data to the Council forces, including detailed analyses of swarm behavior and recommended defensive strategies. The Council commander, a floating jellyfish creature named Belthus, contacted her personally. "Commander Kang, you cannot do this. We need you. You needed us," Jisoo corrected. Past tense. You needed us, and you used us. And when we asked to be treated as equals, you tried to make us prisoners. So now you will learn to fight your own battles. "We will all die," Belthus said. "Perhaps," Jisoo replied. "Or perhaps you will finally learn to adapt, to change, to innovate. Those are skills humanity offered to teach you for 200 years. You always refused. Good luck, Belthus. You will need it." The last human ship left the contested zone on a Tuesday. By Friday, the swarm had advanced 3 light years. The Council forces retreated in chaos. Back on Earth, President Yoonji-ro watched the reports come in from across Council space. Every human was coming home. Every project was being abandoned. Every position was being vacated. The galaxy was learning what it meant to lose humanity's help. "There will be consequences," her advisor, Min Jae-beek, said. "People will suffer." "Yes," Yeonji agreed. "But those consequences are the result of choices the Council made, not choices we made. We offered them partnership. They chose domination. Now they can live with the results." Within 6 months, every human had withdrawn from Council space. Humanity contracted to its own borders and sealed them. The galaxy suddenly felt much larger and much darker than it had before, and in the silence of their absence, the first cracks began to show. 6 months after the last human ship crossed back into Terran space, the Thrall Confederacy announced that the Crimson Plague had entered its final stage. The disease that humanity had been 90% finished curing now ravaged their population without mercy. Their own scientists had tried to complete the work using the data Hyen Lee had left behind, but they could not understand the final steps. Dr. Chekheth sent a message to Earth. It was short and desperate. "We have lost 3 billion people. Our children are dying in the streets. Please, we beg you, send just 1 human scientist to help us finish the cure. We will pay anything. We will give you anything you ask." The message was received by Ambassador Yuna Han at the Terran Diplomatic Corps' headquarters in Geneva. She read it 3 times, feeling the weight of those 3 billion deaths pressing down on her shoulders. Then she filed it away with the other 247 similar requests that had arrived in the past month. She did not respond. Earth's policy was clear: silence. No replies, no explanations, no negotiations. The borders were closed. 2 weeks later, the Crimson Plague killed Chekheth. His last message to his colleagues was simple: we should have treated them better. The terraforming disasters came next. The Pelthic people, waiting for their new home on Velkin 4, in horror as the atmospheric processors began to fail. The Council sent their own engineers to fix the problem, but they did not understand the human systems. They made adjustments that seemed logical to them, but violated the delicate balance Sora Nam had spent years establishing. Velkin 4's atmosphere became toxic within 3 months. The processors, trying to correct the imbalance, overcorrected. Chemical reactions cascaded out of control. The world that was supposed to become a garden became a choking death trap. 2 million Pelthic colonists died before they could be evacuated. It happened again on Velkin 7, and on Tarkus 3, and on New Harmony. One by one, the terraforming projects failed. Some worlds simply reverted to dead rocks. Others became worse than they started, their atmospheres now poisonous instead of just empty. The Council held emergency sessions, trying to understand what went wrong. They had the human data. They had the human designs. Why could they not replicate the results? Elder Kareth finally understood the truth, though it gave him no comfort. The data is not enough, he told the Council. Humans do not think in straight lines like we do. They see connections we miss. They adapt in ways we cannot. We have their notes, but we do not have their minds. and without their minds, the notes are useless. Then the Void Swarm broke through the defensive line. It happened exactly 18 days after the last human ship left the contested zone. The Swarm, which humanity had held back for 15 years, tore through the Council forces like they were made of paper. Commander Belthus, the floating jellyfish who had begged Jusukong to stay, died in the first wave. His ship was dissolved by swarm acid spitters before he could even send a distress signal. The Council tried to reorganize. They brought in fresh fleets from the core worlds. They implemented the defensive strategies that Jizu had left for them. But the swarm adapted faster than the Council could respond. The problem was simple. The Council races had not fought a real war in thousands of years. They had ceremonial battles, limited engagements, polite conflicts with rules and boundaries. The swarm did not care about rules. It cared about consuming and growing. Worse, the Council military doctrine had not changed in millennia. They used the same formations, the same tactics, the same strategies that their ancestors had used. It had always worked before because everyone else in the galaxy fought the same way. Humans had been different. Humans changed their tactics constantly. Huma. NS innovated in the middle of battles. Humans looked at a problem and found 17 different solutions, then tried all of them simultaneously to see which worked best. The swarm could not adapt to humanity because humanity never stayed the same long enough to adapt to, but the Council. The swarm learned their patterns in days. After that, it was just slaughter. 12 star systems fell in the first 3 weeks. 40 billion people died or were consumed. The Council fleet lost half its ships trying to hold a defensive line at the Kelder Nebula. The swarm broke through anyway. In Geneva, Yunahan watched the reports with a carefully neutral expression. Around her, younger diplomats struggled with what they were seeing. "We have to help them," said Junior Ambassador Hounshin. "This is genocide. We are watching species die. We are watching the consequences of their choices," Yuna replied calmly. "They chose to reject our partnership. They chose to try to control us instead of working with us. This is the result. But we have the ability to stop it," Hound insisted. "We have the tactical knowledge. We have the ships. We could turn this around." "Yes, we could," Yuna agreed. "And then what?" "We save them. They thank us. And in 10 years, they try to put chains on us again because they are afraid of how powerful we have become. How many times should we save people who refuse to respect us?" Hound had no answer for that. The economic collapse hit 3 months after the withdrawal. Human shipping corporations had managed 73% of all galactic trade routes. They had not done this through force or monopoly. They had done it by being better at it than anyone else. Human ships were faster, more efficient, and more reliable. Human logistics systems could track a single package across 50 star systems without losing it. When the humans left, they took their ships and their systems with them. The Council races tried to fill the gap using their own shipping companies, but it was a disaster. Trade routes that had run smoothly for decades suddenly collapsed. Ships arrived late, or not at all. Cargo was lost or delivered to wrong locations. Supply chains that had seemed automatic fell apart. Famines spread through the outer colonies. Medicine shipments never arrived. Construction materials sat in warehouses on one world, while construction projects on another world stopped for lack of supplies. The elder races, who had known nothing but abundance for millennia, suddenly faced shortages. Riots broke out on 17 different worlds as populations fought over limited resources. On Earth, President Yunji-ro received a personal message from Elder Kareth. It was the first time any council member had tried to contact humanity's leadership directly since the withdrawal. President Ro Kareth's message began. "I am contacting you not as an elder of the council, but as a person who has finally understood his mistake. We were wrong. We saw your strength as a threat when we should have seen it as a gift. We tried to control you when we should have celebrated you. We took your contributions for granted and assumed you would always be there to solve our problems. Now we are drowning in the consequences of our arrogance. I do not ask for your help. I do not deserve to ask. I simply wanted you to know that at least one of us understands what we have lost. Young-ji read the message twice. Then, she deleted it without responding. Some lessons needed to be learned through pain, not words. On Mars, engineer Taijin Quan worked on the construction of a new orbital shipyard. Around him, younger engineers monitored the galactic news feeds, watching the chaos spread across council space. "We should do something," said junior engineer Bora Park. "We cannot just watch this happen." Taijin did not look up from his work. They made their choice. "We made ours, but people are dying." "People were always dying," Taijin said. "They died in the wars we fought for the council. They died in the disasters we cleaned up for the council. They died in the plagues we cured for the council. For 200 years we bled for them. And when we asked only to be treated as equals, they tried to make us slaves. So now they can solve their own problems. Maybe they will. Maybe they will not. But either way, it is their responsibility now, not ours." Bora turned back to her console, unsatisfied with the answer, but unable to argue against it. In the council chambers on Nexus Station, the remaining delegates met in emergency session. The chamber was half empty. Several species had already gone extinct or collapsed into civil war. Others had withdrawn to their home systems. Abandoning the council to save themselves, Ambassador Verith, the Vreniks, who had delivered the ultimatum to humanity 6 months ago, stood in the center of the chamber. His crystal form flickered dimly, a sign of his exhaustion. "We are falling apart," he said simply. "Everything we built over 10,000 years is crumbling. And it is crumbling because we lost the one species that was holding it all together. Not through force, not through conquest, but through simple competence and willingness to help. We destroyed ourselves through our own fear and pride." Silence that followed said more than any words could have. 1 year after humanity's withdrawal, the Galactic Council existed in name only. What had been a grand alliance of species spanning thousands of star systems was now a collection of desperate survivors trying to hold on to what little they had left. The Void Swarm had consumed 47 systems. The Battle of Rendix Point, which the Council had announced as their great counterattack, had ended in total disaster. 3,000 Council ships had engaged the swarm, using tactics approved by a committee of military experts from 8 different species. The tactics had been tested in simulations. They had been reviewed by historians who confirmed similar strategies had worked in the past. The swarm destroyed 2,000 Council ships in 6 hours. The problem was not that the Council's tactics were bad. The problem was that they were predictable. The Council military had not changed its core doctrine in 8,000 years. Every battle they fought followed the same basic patterns. They would establish a defensive formation, wait for the enemy to attack, then counter with overwhelming force concentrated at weak points. It had worked for millennia, because everyone in the galaxy fought that way. Warfare was a ritualized dance where both sides knew the steps. The swarm did not dance. The swarm learned. It watched the Council formations and understood them in hours. Then it simply attacked from directions the Council had not defended because their doctrine said those directions did not need defending. When the Council tried to adapt, they moved slowly. Every change required committee approval. Every new tactic needed to be tested and verified. By the time they implemented a new strategy, the swarm had already evolved past it. Humanity would have changed tactics 3 times during a single battle. Humanity would have tried insane ideas that should not work, but somehow did. Humanity would have broken every rule in the book if it meant surviving, but humanity was gone. Fleet Commander Taiwan Jung sat in his command chair aboard the border patrol ship Vigilant Dawn, watching his sensors. He was stationed along humanity's closed borders, and his job was simple: keep everyone out. Today, his sensors showed something that made his chest tighten. 16,000 ships were approaching human space. They were moving slowly, engines barely functioning, hulls damaged and leaking atmosphere. It was the largest refugee fleet Taiwan had ever seen. "Sir," said Lieutenant Borum Song from the communication station, "we are receiving a transmission. It is from the Vreniks." "Put it through," Taiwan ordered. The face that appeared on screen was not really a face. The Vreniks were crystalline beings, so they projected an approximation of a face when talking to biological species. But Taiwan could see the cracks in the crystal, the dim flickering of what should have been bright energy. This Vreniks was dying. Human ship, the Vreniks said. I am Counselor Jareth. I am leading what remains of my people. The swarm has taken our worlds. We have nowhere else to go. Please, I am begging you, grant us asylum in human space. We will work. We will serve. We will do anything you ask. Just please, do not send us away to die. Taiwan felt something twist in his stomach. 16,000 ships. That meant millions of Vreniks refugees. Men, women, children, all running from death. But his orders were clear. Counselor Jareth, Taiwan said carefully, I am sorry for what has happened to your people. Truly, I am. But humanity's borders are closed. I cannot grant you entry. Please, Jareth said again. We were wrong. We know we were wrong. Ambassador Veroth, who delivered your ultimatum, died when the swarm took our homeworld. His last words were an apology to humanity for his arrogance. Does that mean nothing? It means he learned too late, Taiwan replied. I am transmitting star charts to unclaimed systems in Sector 7. They are far from the swarm's current path. You should be safe there for a time. But I cannot let you enter human space. You are condemning us to death, Jareth said flatly. No, Taiwan corrected gently. The Council condemned you to death when they chose fear over friendship. We are simply choosing not to save you from consequences that are not our responsibility. Jareth's projection flickered. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, if we had treated you as equals instead of tools, would you help us now? Taiwan considered the question honestly. Maybe, maybe not. But we would have figured it out together as partners. That option is gone now. Then I suppose we deserve this, Jareth said quietly. Tell your people that some of us, at least, understood our mistake. Even if we understood too late, transmission ended. Taiwan watched the refugee fleet change course, heading for the coordinates he had sent. He did not know if they would make it. He tried not to care. Borum turned to look at him. Captain, that felt wrong. Many things feel wrong, Lieutenant, Taiwan said. That does not make them our responsibility. On Earth, President Ro faced growing pressure from within her own government. The Terran Assembly was divided. Some representatives argued that humanity had made its point, and should now offer limited assistance to prevent complete genocide. Others insisted the borders must remain sealed. Madame President, said Assemblymember Kung Su Min, we are watching the extinction of multiple species. The Vreniks are nearly gone. The Thrall have lost 90% of their population. The Korath homeworld has fallen. At what point does our justified anger become cruelty? Yunji stood at the podium, looking out at the assembled representatives. Assemblymember Min, I understand your concern. I feel it too. But let me ask you a question. If we help them now, what happens in 20 years? In 50 years, do you think they will remember this lesson? Do you think they will treat us as equals? Or do you think they will fall back into old habits once the immediate crisis passes? We cannot know that, Kung Su replied. Exactly, Yunji said. We cannot know. But we do know what happened when we helped them before. We know they took our aid for granted. We know they tried to chain us when we became too successful. We know they saw us as tools, not people. So I ask you, how many times should we save people who refuse to respect us? The assembly chamber fell silent. We are not monsters, Yanji continued. But we are also not saviors. We are a sovereign people who chose to walk away from an abusive relationship. The galaxy is suffering because it relied too heavily on us. That is not our fault. That is the fault of species who built their entire civilization on the assumption that humans would always be there. To fix their problems, she paused. Then added, however, I am not completely without compassion. Any human who wishes to leave Earth and offer aid independently may do so. We will not stop them. We will not support them officially, but we will not prevent them either. Free people make free choices. But as a government, as a unified Terran state, we will maintain our borders and our neutrality. The vote was close, but Yunji's position held. The borders would remain closed. But individual humans could choose their own path. Meanwhile, technological collapse spread through council space. Countless systems relied on human maintenance. Quantum communication arrays that connected the galaxy. Fusion reactors with modifications only human engineers understood. Medical equipment that human doctors had customized for alien physiology. Station life support systems that had been optimized by human programmers. All of it began to fail. On Station Kelix 9, where the Crimson Plague research had been abandoned, the main reactor began to malfunction. The Thrall engineers tried to fix it using the maintenance logs humans had left behind. But they could not understand the notes. The reactor had been modified 17 times over 5 years, each modification building on the previous one. The logs documented what was changed, but not why. Because the human engineers had considered the reasoning obvious to the Thrall. It was incomprehensible. The reactor failed catastrophically. Station Kelix 9, which housed 30,000 Thrall, exploded. There were no survivors. Similar disasters occurred across council space. Not because humans had sabotaged anything, but because they had been so good at their jobs that they made complex things look easy. When they left, the ease went with them, leaving only the complexity behind. In Geneva, Ambassador Yunahan compiled reports of every disaster, every failure, every death. She did not do this with satisfaction. She did this because history needed to remember what had happened and why. "Do you feel guilty?" asked her assistant, Hounshin. "Every day," Yuna admitted. "But guilt and responsibility are different things. I feel guilty because I am human, and humans feel empathy for suffering. But I do not feel responsible because we did not cause this. We offered the council partnership. They chose domination. This is the price of their choice, and if they all die?" Hound asked quietly. Yuna looked out the window at Earth's blue sky. "Then the galaxy will remember them as a cautionary tale. And perhaps the next civilization that rises will treat its helpers with more respect." Collapse accelerated. Species went extinct. Governments fell. Entire regions of space went dark as communication systems failed. The Great Galactic Council, which had stood for 10,000 years, crumbled in less than 18 months, and through it all, humanity remained silent. Watching from behind closed borders as the galaxy learned what it meant to lose them, 3 years after humanity walked away, the galaxy had changed beyond recognition. Where there had once been order, there was now chaos. Where there had been certainty, there was now fear. The Great Galactic Council, which had maintained peace and prosperity for 10 millennia, was reduced to a handful of desperate survivors clinging to their remaining worlds. The Void Swarm had finally been stopped, but the cost had been unimaginable. The Council forces forced to actually fight for their survival rather than rely on human tactical genius, had learned through blood and fire. They adapted slowly and painfully. They changed their tactics. They abandoned their 10,000-year-old military doctrine and started trying new things. It worked eventually. The swarm was halted at the Broken Ring Nebula, but by then, 1/3 of council space had been consumed. Trillions had died. The elder races, who had not known real war in living memory, were traumatized. Their populations used to comfort and safety struggled to cope with the reality of loss. Mental illness spread. Suicide rates skyrocketed. Entire civilizations teetered on the edge of collapse even after the fighting stopped. The Vreniks were gone. Every last one of them. Counselor Jareth's refugee fleet had made it to the unclaimed systems that Captain Taewon Jung had directed them to. But the swarm had found them anyway. The Vreniks, who had once been one of the most powerful species in the council, were now extinct. The Thrall Confederacy had fractured into 17 different factions, each blaming the others for the disaster. Their population had dropped from 14 billion to 800 million. The Crimson Plague, combined with the swarm attacks and civil war, had nearly destroyed them. The Korath Empire had lost its homeworld. Elder Karath himself had survived, but he was one of the few. His people were scattered across a dozen refugee colonies, shadow of their former glory. Dozens of minor species had vanished completely. The galaxy's diversity, built up over millions of years, had been decimated in less than 3 years. In the ruins of Nexus Station, which had been partially destroyed in a swarm attack, the remaining council members gathered. There were only 7 species left with enough strength to maintain representatives. They met not in the Grand Council chamber, which was now exposed to vacuum, but in a small emergency bunker deep in the station's core. Elder Kareth stood before them. He was old even for his long-lived species, and the weight of what had happened pressed down on him visibly. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with regret. "My fellow delegates," he began, "we are here to make a decision. Several of us believe we should contact humanity and request their assistance in rebuilding. Others believe we have no right to ask for anything from them. I have thought long about this question, and I have concluded that we should contact them, but not to ask for help. We should contact them to apologize." Murmurs spread through the small chamber. "An apology will not bring back the dead," someone said. No, Kareth agreed. "But perhaps it will prevent future generations from making our mistakes. I propose we send a delegation to human space. Not to beg, not to negotiate, but simply to acknowledge what we did and to accept responsibility for the consequences." The vote was unanimous. They would go. 2 weeks later, a small ship approached the edge of human space. It carried Elder Karath and 6 other representatives, one from each remaining council species. They sent a message ahead, requesting permission to meet with human authorities. The response came from Admiral Wan Hoshin, commander of the Border Defense Fleet. He agreed to meet them at Outpost Vigilant, a human station on the border. But he made it clear, this was not a negotiation. The borders would remain closed regardless of what was said. When Kareth's ship docked at Outpost Vigilant, he was surprised by what he saw. The station was new, built in the 3 years since humanity's withdrawal. It was massive, bristling with weapons, and clearly designed to make one thing absolutely certain: nothing was getting through that humanity did not want through. Admiral Wanho met them in a simple conference room. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He gestured for them to sit, then sat across from them with his hands folded on the table. "Elder Kareth," Wanho said, "I am surprised to see you. I read the reports. I know what happened to your homeworld. I am sorry for your loss." Kareth felt something break inside him at those simple words. After everything that had happened, this human admiral still offered condolences. "Thank you," Kareth said quietly. "Admiral, we have come here not to ask for anything, but to say something we should have said 3 years ago." "We were wrong." Wanho said nothing, so Kareth continued. "We saw your strength and called it danger. We benefited from your generosity and called it duty. We feared your potential and tried to cage you. We destroyed ourselves through our own arrogance, and we hurt you through our fear." Kareth's voice cracked slightly. "We do not ask for forgiveness. We do not deserve it. We ask only that you remember us as a lesson. Never mistake kindness for weakness. Never take for granted those who help you. And never let fear drive you to hurt those who offer friendship." Wanho was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was measured and careful. "Elder Kareth, I appreciate your words. I believe they are sincere. But sincerity does not erase the past. For 200 years, humanity served the Council. We fought your wars. We solved your problems. We asked only to be treated as equals, as partners. Instead, you tried to make us servants. You tried to chain us because our success frightened you." "I know," Kareth said, "and I cannot change that. I can only acknowledge it and hope that others learn from our failure." Wanho nodded slowly. "Humanity has learned our own lesson, Elder. We will never again bind our fate to those who see us as tools rather than equals. We will never again sacrifice ourselves for people who do not respect us. Your apologies noted and appreciated, but it does not change our position. The borders remain closed." "You understand," Kareth said. "We did not come here expecting anything different." The meeting ended shortly after. Kareth and his delegation returned to their ship. Wanho watched them go, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. Justice had been served, but it felt hollow when counted against the cost in lives. Before Kareth's ship left human space, Wanho sent him a final message. Elder, when you return to Council Space, tell your people this. Humanity does not hate you. We do not seek revenge. We simply choose to prioritize ourselves for once. Maybe in time, when new generations rise who do not remember the old fears and old arrogance, we can try again. But not today. Not for a long time. Kareth received the message and wept. 3 months after the delegation returned to Council Space, something unexpected happened. A single human ship entered the ruins of Thrall Space. It was not a government vessel. It was a civilian transport carrying medical supplies and personnel. Dr. Soranam emerged from the ship and was immediately surrounded by desperate Thrall officials. I have completed the Crimson Plague cure, she announced. I did it on my own time, using my own resources. This is not from Earth's government. This is from me, personally, because I could not live with myself knowing I had abandoned the work. With her was a small team of volunteers, Sun Mihan, Yunabe, and 3 other scientists who had worked on the original project. They distributed the cure and trained Thrall doctors in its application. Within weeks, the plague was finally defeated. When Thrall officials tried to thank them, Sora cut them off. Do not thank me. Thank whatever mercy exists in the universe that I am weaker than my government. I was ordered to leave. I should have stayed. I carry that guilt every day. This does not erase it, but maybe it makes it bearable. Similar ships began appearing throughout former Council Space. Individual humans, acting independently, offering help, not as representatives of Earth, but as people who could not watch suffering and do nothing on Earth. President Yunjiro received reports of these rogue aid missions with mixed feelings. Her advisor, Minjae Beek, worried they would undermine the government's position. Should we stop them? Minjae asked. Yunji shook her head. They are not government employees. They are free citizens making their own choices. If we stop them, we become the same kind of controlling force the Council tried to be. Let them go. Let them help if they choose to. But make it clear they act as individuals, not as representatives of Earth. And so, a strange new pattern emerged. Humanity as a whole remained withdrawn, neutral, and closed. But individual humans trickled back into Council Space, offering aid on their own terms. They fixed broken systems. They shared knowledge. They provided medical care, but they did it differently than before. They demanded respect. They demanded payment. They demanded to be treated as equals, not saviors. And when they were not given those things, they left immediately. Slowly, painfully, new relationships began to form, not based on the old assumptions, not based on humanity solving everyone's problems, but based on mutual respect, on fair exchange, on genuine partnership. Engineer Taijin Quan, working on Mars, watched a news report about a human team helping rebuild a Korath station. The team had walked out in the middle of the project when a Korath supervisor called them service workers instead of engineers. They did not return until he apologized publicly and agreed to treat them as equal partners in the work. Taijin said to Bora Park, who was working beside him, respect earned through boundaries, not submission. The galaxy had changed. The old order was gone, shattered by its own arrogance. What rose from the ashes was uncertain, fragile, and painful. But perhaps in time, it would be better than what came before. Perhaps species would learn to value their helpers instead of taking them for granted. Perhaps they would learn that partnership required equality, not hierarchy. Perhaps they would understand that those who walk away in silence are not abandoning you, but teaching you to stand on your own. Or perhaps they would forget, and the cycle would repeat. Only time would tell. But humanity would remember. They would remember the silence. They would remember the closed borders. They would remember the lesson written in trillions of dead. Never again would they sacrifice themselves for those who did not value the sacrifice. Never again would they accept chains disguised as protection. Never again would they mistake gratitude for respect. The galaxy would have to earn humanity's trust this time, and earning it would take generations. In the ruins of Nexus Station, Elder Kareth recorded a final message. It was broadcast throughout what remained of council space, a testament to future generations. "We were given a gift," he said. "A species that helped us freely, that solved our problems, that made our lives better. And we responded with fear and control. We lost them through our own arrogance. If our descendants ever encounter another species like humanity, I beg you, treat them better than we did. Learn from our mistakes. Value kindness, respect, strength, and never ever take for granted those who choose to help you." The message ended. Kareth sat alone in the darkness and waited for whatever future would come. And in that darkness, in that silence, regret echoed through the void.